Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Stay Kind. My name is Azif Mustafa, and I'm your host for tonight. And we are having a couple of fantastic guests for you. As always, we talk to interesting people from all over the world to bring you stories, anecdotes, lessons. We never know what we're going to get, but what we do guarantee is a good time. So, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are tuning in from, as always, please let me know where you're from, where you're tuning in from, what you do, and what's your interest. And if you do have any comments, questions, and views, as always, we'll put it on air and we will address them as far as we can. So just checking to see if, in fact, we are live. So I shall invite my co-host for tonight, Fedora. Assalamu alaikum, Fedora.
Waalaikumsalam, Azif.
How are you?
I'm
We
good.
haven't we haven't chatted for a while.
Yes,
We've
yes. It's
been
been a
yeah, we've both been
couple of
so
weeks.
busy. So hope everything's good with you.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
So you
So
were busy. You had that conference recently.
yes, alhamdulillah. Yes, it was a busy week. Two conferences in a day, but both target groups are youths, our future leaders. How I wouldn't want to miss it for the world, right? So it was a great sessions. That's why today's session is also so apt because one of the in the conference was talking about IR 4.0, and and today we're having these two personalities, and I'm like looking forward to it.
Right. So with that, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, just a quick shout out to our friends Fatin from Shah Alam. We have Shukri from Kampung Pandan. We have Mahtab Alam. Mashallah, mashallah. Nice to have you on board. And whoever else is tuning in, please do let us know where you're from. And without further ado, I'm bringing in our guests for tonight. First of all, Daniel West. He's the founder of Panalyt, as well as his co-founder Yusuf. How are you, gentlemen?
Very good, thanks. Thanks, Asif. Hey, good to see you, Fedor.
Nice to have you on board. Hi, Yusuf.
Hello, nice to join you.
So you guys are tuning in from Singapore?
I'm based in Singapore, and Yusuf is in Indonesia.
Oh, all right. So this is an international endeavor. So
I
let's
think, like
start
a lot
with
of
you.
folks, we are operating a fully remote business, fully international from
Wonderful.
the beginning.
Wonderful. So why don't we start with you, Daniel? So you are now based in Singapore. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from the UK, although I left the UK right after I graduated university and I went to Japan. I was in Japan on and off for 15 years or so. I spent a few years in the US and then some years, I forget, 6-7 years in Singapore, along with some stints in Canada, Dubai, China. I've been
Wow.
sort of all over
So
in
like
my
your
career.
business, you are truly international as well.
Yeah, it's not been a specific plan, but it always ends up where the interesting opportunities are. Always takes me to somewhere else. Yeah.
Nice. And how about you, Yusuf? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm from India originally. Left for university to come to Singapore. Spent around 8 years there, and then traveled around a bit doing the digital nomad experience, and then ended up in Indonesia when COVID happened. So I've been exploring a lot more of this country than you would normally do when you just go on vacations from Singapore over the last two
Right,
years.
right. So where are you currently based in Indonesia?
It's an island called Lombok next
Nice.
to
Oh,
Bali.
not so far from. You can swim to Singapore from Lombok.
Watch out for the sharks, but yeah.
So, all right,
Yeah.
Fedora, you have some questions for Daniel or Yusuf.
Oh gosh, yes. I've been reading about Panalyt, and I'm just so humbled to have you guys here. And first and foremost, congratulations on being Gartner's Cool Vendor for 2021.
Thanks. Yeah, that was very exciting for us. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I must say, I guess it's marriage made from heaven. You're from HR. I mean, with a HR background, Daniel, if I were to get it correctly, and
Hmm.
Yusuf from with a data science, and
Hmm.
that's what Panalyt represents, right? It's about
Hmm.
people data. I mean, it's looking into analytics and on people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did it come about? And I'm very intrigued by the brand itself,
Hmm.
Panalyt. If correct me if I'm wrong, is it P stands for people and is analytics?
Perfect. Got that exactly right for
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, in terms of the name, it's you might have found this if or any of your any of the folks online might have found this if they're in any kind of SaaS or online business, that it's very hard to find a .com nowadays that makes any sense and is at all affordable. So when you're a small startup, you have to think, well, you want to have that .com presence, but you also don't want to pay $10,000 for peopleanalytics.com. And I did a quick survey of 30, 40 of my HR contacts at the time when Yusuf and I had resolved to found this thing. And I threw out ideas to my 30 or 40 contacts through a survey tool. And I said, what do you think of peopleanalytics.com? Or what do you think of people data, HR data? And I went through all the permutations, and none of the options I put out there received an overwhelming response. But the only ones that did get a positive response was something with people and analytics in there. So I go to a tool where you buy the domain name and just start typing in people analytics and deleting a letter and checking, delete a letter and check and delete. And you get down to Panalyt, and you say it a couple of times and starts to sound okay. And then I pinged Yusuf, and Yusuf, if I remember rightly, your initial response was nah. And I said, just please say it to yourself 3 times and then tell me.
Very interesting.
But yeah, no, that's worked out. But in terms of how we got, sorry, Yusuf.
I think that did grow on me quite quickly. So if I remember, I was either on a flight to the airport or I was coming back from the airport, and you'd send that message right around the start of my cab ride. And then initially I was like, no, but then you were right. I mean, like in that 30-minute cab ride or something, by the end of it, it did make
it grows on
quite
you.
sense.
That's what we
Yeah.
find. It's like once people say it a couple of times, and also it means you can type it into Google and you will only find us. I think there's so many SaaS tools that are just named after something, that is a word. I mean, like Monday.com, and you type in Monday, and of course you'll get a million hits before you find the tool you're looking for. And Panalyt, it's just us. And even if you get the name, even if you spell it with an I instead of a Y, it's still us. So
True.
I actually spelt it with an S, and Yusuf had to correct me. I had panelist.
Oh, Panalyst. Yes, no, that actually, yeah. So we have been thinking about should we buy that one, because that's quite common. Yeah. But yeah, in terms of how we got together. So after, my most recent, my last corporate HR role was with Uber. I was the head of HR for Uber International, based out of Singapore and Amsterdam, and looking after all of what was Uber outside the US in the very early days. And after leaving Uber, I started working as a freelance consultant, working for VCs and investors, and basically spending anything from 1 day to 6 months with their startup companies, helping them to set up their HR technologies and processes for scale. And one of my first gigs was supporting a super well-funded e-commerce company in Dubai. The local competitor to Amazon is how they wanted to style themselves, and they had $1 billion in cash from various funds, and were good to grow. And they had maybe 100 people, and we had to set them up for, how do you go from 100 to 10,000 in a year? And so I was on board there, and I was looking at this complete mess of data, and there was a very basic HRIS in place. And so obviously I'm starting to lay out what I think the ideal tech stack is for them, but I couldn't even figure out how many people they had and who they were paid. And at the same time, Yusuf had been pinging me on LinkedIn about a role at Uber, because that was still how I looked on my LinkedIn, as I hadn't changed it from Uber. And I ended up calling him and saying, not at Uber, but would you like to come and sort out this complete mess of data that I've got in this super high growth startup? And I think we had, what you said, like 1 or 2 conversations, and you got on a plane and came to Dubai.
Yeah, a couple. Yeah. I think it was 1 or something. Yeah.
I think it was 1. I think we really hit it
one,
off.
yeah.
And yeah, Yusuf came on a plane, and then sat down with this just mess of Excel sheets and sorted it all together, and together we worked out what I'd been thinking of for years, which is how come we as companies have invested so much in HR systems and technologies. And I've worked again at Uber and at Apple. We had some of the best and most expensive technologies available, and yet me as an HR business partner, I couldn't get data out of those tools easily, and I couldn't put it together easily, and that whole setup didn't work. And I was describing this to Yusuf one day over our projects, and he said, well, look, you could do this, this is buildable, why don't we? And so we did.
Wow, excellent.
Wow. And it all started from LinkedIn. So the power of
That's a really good point, Fido. Yeah, absolutely. It did.
Yeah.
It totally
Wow.
started.
So let's shout out to our LinkedIn buddies who are in the audience right now. We have one,
thanks
Muhammad
you guys
Noor,
for connecting us. LinkedIn connects people, exactly.
That's right. And I have my buddy Lee Michael Murphy all the way from California. Hey Lee, nice to have you on board. We have Mush all the way from KL. LinkedIn connects people. That's right. So yeah, all of us here are connected via LinkedIn. Fedora and I are in a group called Growth Academy Malaysia, and we really focus on how to connect more people with each other and how we can, share whatever little we know about linking on LinkedIn with as many people as we can. So tonight we want to talk a little bit more about Panalyt, and this was an amazing story you were telling us how you and Yusuf hooked up. So since then, how has the company, has it grown? How many people are in there now?
Sure. Yeah, so we founded a bit over 4 years ago. We founded in Singapore. Singapore's a nice, easy place to set up a company and get your startup going. Yusuf is a graduate from NTU, which is a very prestigious technology university in Singapore. And he reached out to a couple of his sort of the next level down, the year below him, and identified a couple of just really, really hot developers, and we brought them on board as interns for our new idea. I can't even call it a company at that time. It was an idea, as a concept. And while we were still working on consulting projects, we started working with these guys on fleshing out the tool, and they came up with the MVP, and it's the usual SaaS startup story. We have an MVP that works. We take it to the VC firms in Singapore, and there's a number of very good, like, super early stage VCs in Singapore, and they gave us funding, and some of our clients that we were working with us through our consulting, they supported us with funding, and then we were off to the races. And so we hired the initial, what we call the co-founder team. Myself and Yusuf, a couple of key developers, our chief data scientist, and our UI UX designer, and we started off essentially in a small co-working space, and we since now operate completely remotely, but we started off as a small co-working space in Singapore, and if you fast forward for the last 3 years odd, we now have a very fast-growing business in Japan, which has turned out to be our fastest-growing market. Japanese companies really have really gravitated to our product, partly as some of the technical aspects of the product, and also the fact that I spent, say, 15 years in Japan, and one of our co-founders is a lady called Takako Ogawa, who spent 8 years with Google, both in Japan and in the US, and as a bilingual Japanese, she now works in Japan, and her taking our product and having her background from Google, my background from Apple and Uber, and our joint experience with the Japan market has meant that our growth in Japan has been very, very rapid. And we also have developed some fantastic sales partners internationally. We have a fantastic partner in Latin America who's presenting Panalyt as the product for that region. It's been a very underserved region, and a great sales partner in India and across Southeast Asia. So we're now, I think, just over 20 people. We just passed our seed round funding, and we have some great investors on board. And yeah, we're looking to grow our client base, solidify the product, and we look to our Series A funding sort of middle end of next year.
Excellent. We wish you well with that. Let's go to Yusuf. Graduate from a very prestigious university, young man. What made you go the startup route? I mean, I'm pretty sure you could have gotten a job, perhaps, at a prestigious company as well. So what was it in Daniel that made you accept whatever offer he made?
So it was kind of interesting. So in Singapore, this was before, like right now, startups became really popular there, right? So, but at the time when I was going through university, there were a few, but the classic route in Singapore was if your grades are high, you try to get into a bank, like in a bank, something on, the front office side that pays you a lot of money. That's the normal thinking there. And I did some internships at some banks, but then the issue was that you don't really get to grow as much as you would want to. It felt very rigid in the sense, okay, this is a job, you do it, you can't really grow that much outside of it. And after, I think, like or four internships at like really big companies, I realized that I didn't really want to go down that path where it was basically, like to get to where I wanted, you had to go through a rigid 6-7 years of a path that's just laid out and you can't really diverge from that. And then, yeah, I mean, the switch to startups happened quite randomly, I would say. So I went for a hackathon at Facebook where, I mean, that got me into the whole culture of, just building projects for fun. Did something with Skyscanner, we found a flaw in the system, and then it was interesting in the sense where I messaged the CEO of Skyscanner on LinkedIn about that issue, and the guy replied.
Wow.
And then and they kind of like offered me a job there. And at that moment, the switch went off in my head where it's like, why should I bother with the recruiter, when I can just reach people at companies I want to work at. And I think Daniel was heading HR for Uber internationally at that point, and he was based out of Singapore, at least as per his LinkedIn or so. And then I was just like, well, this is me, this is my portfolio, can I work for Uber? And essentially, yeah, that sort of like got me to working with him. Then we did a lot of projects, and Daniel's always kind of like, even at, I think I was like 21 at that time, or 20, but he was still giving a lot of responsibilities. I mean, a lot of hours. I remember a lot of weekends as well in Bangkok were just spent, when people think, oh, young guy in Bangkok must be having a lot of fun when he's not working. But for us, it was just, weekends and late nights talking about work, and which discussions eventually turned into Panalyt as such. And
Yeah,
so that's
I remember that. Some consulting projects particularly get really absorbing. I mean, they can be so interesting, and you've only got a short amount of time to deliver, and it's not something you've been. It's different from a long-term job where you've been in that role for 5 years, and it becomes routine. And even though you have new challenges, the environment's routine, the challenge is routine. And so when we're working on projects together, yeah, they do become all encompassing. They're interesting and challenging, and our project in Dubai definitely was. And yeah, so yeah, I agree with you. So yeah, we did spend a lot of weekends and like long hours, just yeah, talking through the problem, and that's obviously what leads me to talk to Yusuf about the history of, yeah, this is not a unique problem for this company. This is a problem that all companies face, and then you start thinking about a structural answer.
Well, what an interesting story for sure on how you guys kind of pair up, right? I think for Yusuf, I think you just went ahead and just go for it and connected with Daniel on LinkedIn. I think that's amazing story. Azif will come back, yeah. But I'm gonna. I think the other point about Panalyt is, I mean, I look at your tagline, right? It's basically people analytics that work. Maybe you want to give a bit of perspective of that, because what would be some of your competitors? Is it already, or you're one of the
We are one of the very early ones, but
right.
yeah, that catchphrase, people analytics at work. So there's another similar phrase that we use, which is practical people analytics,
Yeah.
and it comes out of the only option that we had before we founded Panalyt was and still is, a company called Visio, which is a fantastic company, and Visio is the granddaddy of people analytics. It's a dedicated enterprise level people analytics platform. But it is an enterprise level system. You need to be a relatively large organization. You need to have a whole suite of challenges. You need to have a team that's ready to put it in place, and data scientists or at least analytics professionals to actually leverage a tool of that scale, size, complexity, and cost. It's a fantastic tool, but you need to be of a certain size organization and have a certain investment level to make it make sense. And obviously in the situation where I was and where we were of looking at these super high growth startup companies, they don't want to spend the cash there. They don't have the spare resources to put into a tool like that. And literally when you're going from 100 people to 1,000, you don't have the time to think about those those 6-month implementation projects. So interestingly, in looking at that tool and thinking about our problem, it starts to give you the checklist of the product features. What does our product have to do? Because this tool doesn't do it. How do we say, okay, that's the right tool for that environment? What's the right tool for this environment? And so that gave us the early sort of checklist of, okay, well, it has to implement really quickly, has to be really easy to learn. You can't need any tech team involvement to put it in place. You don't need to have a people analytics team in-house. And so that difference gives us the shape of what our tool had to be. Because now there are many more competitors. I say many. there are probably 6 to 12 competitors that we've seen along the way, and at least a third of those have been acquired by other companies, even in the last sort of 4 years of us being in business. Because obviously, if you've dedicated your time into building a people analytic or an analytical engine and platform, many of the other HR tech products are good at what they do, but they're poor at the analytics side of their product. So a performance management tool or a compensation tool, they tend to not have great analytics modules. So they've been acquiring our competitors, which is fine for us. But yeah, there aren't many tools that are specifically on people analytics, or the way we do it. And then there is a difference to how we've approached it. I think because myself and Takako come from HR, we've approached it with a very practical mindset. We can see the problem that we're trying to solve and how we can solve it with the tool. And so I think that makes us different from tools that are built by technologists or marketers that see the opportunity, but they don't really understand the user the way we do.
Oh, I've been checking your product out. You're looking at the YouTubes, and I must say the UX, UI, and it's so amazing. The notes and the level of details, the insights that you're giving, and the ability for such of your solutions of integrating with various. As long as you have the data, you're already analyzing with CRMs and the risk assessment.
Our position is that you almost certainly already have the data. I think so many of our clients worry that they don't have the data, or it's not clean enough, or it's not ready. And our point is, that's exactly what we're here for. We are here for companies where you don't think you have the data, but we know that you do. If you're paying people, if you're hiring, if you're running an HRIS of any kind, even if it's on an Excel sheet, then you have the data. And we can help clean it, structure it, sort it, and make it usable for you.
I mean, again, and that's where I'm coming. I mean, my next question about maturity of an organization with regards to data management, right? I mean, how mature should the organization be in terms of data management, in terms of data culture, right? Because you might have data regardless of, it might be Excel. I mean, you're already integrating from a base of Excel, but perhaps data might not be complete, right? And how do you ensure that, again, going back to my question, what level of maturity of an organization to be able to fully maximize and leverage on your solutions?
Yeah. Well, I think you said a couple of key things there. You talked about data culture and fully leverage. Okay, and so, if you're going to fully leverage a tool like ours, then sure, you want to be of a certain size and have someone that's focused on leveraging the tool and making sure it works for your organization. But that's the high level user of our tool. There's a core usage of the tool, which is about you have data and it's locked away. And it may not be complete and it may not be 100% accurate, but you have it and you're running your business using it. So wouldn't you like to know what it is and make it better? So you have let's say your company's been running for 2 years, right? So you have 24 payroll files, which have employee IDs, which have the employee's name, birth date, gender, and salaries. And obviously you have hire dates and you have exit dates. So with just that data set, just those 24 months of payroll, you could load that into Panalyt, and within a week you would be seeing your headcount trends, you'd be seeing your demographic trends, your gender pay gap, your gender diversity, your attrition, and your attrition by all those demographics. And then just if you're stuck on Excel, just load that file every month and it's just going to automatically spread into those core dashboards. So just for core basic reporting, we can lift you up from you've got Excel sheets and you're not quite sure what's in there to having, all right, clear, viewable data, and you can easily see within the data where some people are missing some points. So you'll see gender, for example. So gender should add up to 100%. So when you've got 40 male, 40 female, and 20 unknown, well, then just drill into that 20 unknown. It'll give you the list of who they are. And then you go and fix that in the next file. And then it'll be fixed next time you log in, right? So it helps you to identify where your data has gaps, helps you fix it one time, and then it's always going to be clean from that point on. And that's of course a foundation, and then you build from there to the more complex use cases. So if you can start to add in, if you have a grading structure, add that grade structure in place. That's normally not in payroll data. If you have recruitment, if you're using a recruitment tool, connect us to the recruitment tool. You'll get all that data around how quickly you hire people, who hires the best people, and you can start to see things like recruitment outcomes, the outcomes of your recruitment processes, who becomes your top performers based on how they were recruited, who leaves the company. You can start to look at predictive analytics on what trends on attrition can help you start to predict who's leaving. But all of that advanced analytics still comes from a base foundation of just your solid, correct data. And then there are other more advanced data sets, so like CRM, communications data, performance data, etc. But every new data set builds on top of that foundation. So in terms of the size or complexity of an organization, you could be 200 people, and if you're in 3 countries and you've got 3 different payrolls running, you will instantly see an advantage of using Panalyt. But if you are 2,000 people, you're going to get more advantage out of using Panalyt. That's obviously the case. But you also made a point about, you mentioned data maturity. So the point of our tool that I think is quite different from a lot of other systems is our end user is a line manager or an HR business partner. Our end user isn't a data scientist or an analytics professional. So we're trying to put the data in the hands of the manager who actually has to make the decisions, or the business partner that needs to support that manager. So we believe in democratizing the data. And so then, yes, you need to start thinking of, is my team mature enough to understand this data and take the right action on it? But you can only start to get them to be mature by giving them access to the data. You just need to be progressive in how you do it. You don't release the whole tool to every user on day one. You give access to the most simple dashboards. You follow up with people that, are they understanding them? Are they making the right decisions, etc. But it has, every journey has to start with that step. Yeah.
Oh, I hear you. I mean, I totally get it. I think for the likes of Yusuf, I mean, being from data science, I mean, HR, like you said, Daniel, I mean, HRIS system has loads of data. Yusuf must be excited looking at the data and how you play with the data. So what's your first experience looking at HR related data in this first project that you did with Panalyt? What did you find interesting?
I think there's like 2 kind of like, or maybe 3 different projects, I could say. The first one that we were doing was basically, so this company that Daniel mentioned, they hired, they went from like 250, 300 people to more than 3,000 people by the time I left 7 weeks later. So they hired a
Yeah,
lot
it was
of people,
mad.
but
Absolute madness. Yeah.
But the issue was managers were expecting people to join on certain dates based on which they made their plans, their business plans. But there wasn't enough clarity on where were people. I mean, I think bulk of the people were hired from outside the country, and there wasn't much clarity into where they were in the visa process as such. So we built some, tools to kind of show where people are and what's the expected time for them to finally come on board the company. That was my first exposure to it. And the
And I
sense
don't
where
remember you being ecstatically happy. I do remember just the shaking of head over just how bad and how unclean the data was, and the work you had to do. I don't remember excitement, but I do remember a lot of hard work getting it done.
yeah, that was that. But yeah, it was kind of like interesting in the sense I mean, at this point in the first project, it wasn't really I mean, I'd done some basic dashboards for Daniel, but that was just more around headcount as such. We weren't really getting into any of the other fields around HR data, but I got to see how bad the data was. And I mean, but I shouldn't say bad in the sense there was still a structure to it. There were a lot of Excel files all over the place, but then you would normally find some common structure to the data. So at some point, I was trying to do it manually, but then slowly I got to the point of automating it, and I couldn't do
I
it
think it was
perfectly.
that
But then,
discovery that it was possible to link the files together, and I think that's what had been missing from the team that had been sort of the admin team that had been working on the processes beforehand. I think with us coming in, or you particularly coming in and actually taking an overview of the whole process, you found the linkages between the files, and I think that was what was critical. And again, I think that was a critical step for you in understanding what the problem that we were trying to solve on a more macro level.
yeah, though the pushback I would give there is like when you try to do it one off, it seems easy as compared to then trying to build a system that does it for.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and actually, this is actually a thing that we encounter with presenting Panalyt to potential clients. Is that there's always a point where I think companies, particularly larger companies, think that they can do this themselves. They go, well, this is just a data problem. We can just take the data out of the tools ourselves, and we can push it in through Tableau or something. And what we try to get across to them is, you can get to a certain point doing it that way, but it isn't scalable. You won't be able to just keep on adding data and more data and more data to it unless you're going to build a dedicated team for doing this. And why would you do that? That's not what your business is. And I don't. And anyone who's maybe as old as me online would remember back in the day when before SaaS tools, there were a number of companies that built their own HRISs, built their own basic HR databases. And even Apple built its own HR database called Merlin. And a great tool for the time and what it could do compared to what was available in the market. But within a couple of years was completely outdated by what came along on the SaaS model market. And it's like you can build it yourself, but why would you? It doesn't make sense to do it. And we've had a number of companies that have come back to us a year later saying, oh yeah, we tried to do that. That's really hard, and it's not worth our time. Please come and do this for us. And it's taken us 4 years to get to where we are, and we're constantly improving and building on the tool. So
Wow.
I just saw Azif's question. Would you like me to answer that?
Yes, please. So yes, I think Aziz is having a bit of a connection issue, but yes, the question from Azif here. As a HR practitioner myself, I know how important clean people data is for our company. Do you find any pushback from the management in democratizing the data and letting line managers have HR info in their heads? Yeah,
I think there's clearly a concern, and to your phrase earlier, Fedora, about a data culture, and are people understanding of, are they going to be able to understand the data properly? And because it's people data, are they going to be making the right sort of mature decisions based on the data? And I think one aspect is we're putting a tool in place that allows the company to democratize the data, and we always think of it in terms of having the business partner, the HR business partner, and the line manager on the same page and collaborating, because they can see the data, they can have mature conversations about the data together. I personally, again, maybe because I was a business partner, I don't envisage the line managers just being off on their own and there's no HR support at all, and just channel them data and trust them to make that doesn't sound realistic to me at all. But it does sound realistic to me if you have relatively data savvy managers, or managers that do want to be empowered with the data about their business, because they do have their financial data and their logistics data, their marketing, their client data. Why don't they have their people data? But they have their own financial data, but they work with their finance advisor, their CFO before they make any financial decisions. They might have their marketing data, but they'll work with their head of marketing before they make a marketing decision. So I believe managers, they want their own HR data so that they can have a more intelligent discussion with their business partners. So I think the logic is there, but I totally agree with the premise of the question. Is there's still a conservatism in HR that we don't believe other people can handle our data or make mature decisions or will talk to us properly about. And I don't think that's I think that is a concern that clients have. It doesn't seem to hold people back from wanting to put Panalyt in place, because even at the most simple level, you put Panalyt in the hands of all your HR business partners and the country HR managers, and even then, Panalyt has made all your processes easier and smoother, and data is in the hands of the right people. But we do increasingly have clients that want to put Panalyt in front of their managers. They're just very particular about which dashboards, which data sets. And the idea of having a scalable tool that is automatically giving the right population to the right manager, that is something that people really want. But yeah, I do agree with the premise of the question. People are being very careful about how they roll it out.
Do I think there's one level below that as well? Usually when we're talking about it, you might think about like dashboards, reports, some advanced insights or something, but we've had a lot of conversations with teams where, even if it's, let's take the HR business partner as such, let alone, let's just put analytics aside right now, right? The problem you have is if you're trying to like consider one employee as such, you might have data for that employee sitting in, 4 to 7 different systems, depending, or maybe even further. And I remember we spoke with one company that had like 130 different systems globally. So I don't know
Because
how many that was for one
they're
country.
in 30 different countries and
Yeah.
multiple entities, and every entity in every country had their own payroll and their own, exactly.
So the problem you have is like, let's say if you just want to, let's say, understand, if you want to compare Daniel and Yusuf for, let's say, a promotion decision, right? And you want to just look at all of the historical data to make that information. Right now, what you have to do is go and pull out spreadsheets from different tools to get that historical information in place and then do the analysis. And then it's a lot of micro tasks like this that they have to keep doing throughout the day. And what I think is that it's not really that much of a flashy use case that you would really put up on your sales pitch or something, but I think it's incredibly powerful in terms of how much time that can just save for someone to just go in and say, okay, for Daniel, this is Daniel's history, this is his performance, this is how his pay has changed, and so on.
I think that's absolutely right, and that's absolutely right, and I think again it reflects that in terms of myself and Takio, who sort of designing the tool and putting the tool in place, we know that experience, and I would say the bulk of our buyers are people that have had that experience. They immediately see this is going to this is going to make everyone in my team be 20% more effective, 30% more effective. They're not going to be spending so much of their time on Excel sheets. I don't think in my whole career, I don't think any of my bosses or internal clients ever understood the enormous percentage of my time I spent pulling Excel sheets, merging them together and putting it into PowerPoint. I don't think they ever understood that work, because I was doing it, until 4 a.m. and then sort of showing up with my deck, and the deck being all looking all fancy and nice, but still someone in the meeting will say, okay, but this attrition data, can I see that by gender? And I'm thinking, oh god, and I've got to go back and I've got to spend all night like cutting it by gender and then bringing it back to them the next day. And I don't think they ever understood. If I look back in my career, I know that I spent 20-30% of my time doing data crunching, and a thing that I'm not qualified to do. But I know most HR practitioners.
And pivot table doesn't cut it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah, I hope Daniel and Yusuf answered Aziz's questions, and I would like to also invite questions if any. So we're having both Daniel and Yusuf here, founders and co-founders of Panalyt. HR solutions, people data solutions. It's an amazing, you should check it out. So if you, along this journey for both of you, in terms of, because this topic today, it's about staying kind. right? So as a startup, it's been a 4-year journey for both of you. I think to see that tremendous growth that you guys have achieved, like I said earlier, the Gartner's cool. I love the term Gartner's cool partners, right? For 2021. So what would one, a story that you can tell in terms of in relation to staying in kindness along this journey, whether with your partners, whether between the two of you, that you could share with us and inspire all of us, and then perhaps those wanting to go into this journey, like both of you. Anyway.
Sorry, I was muted. Kindness is a great topic. It is something that I think about. It's interesting for myself as an HR practitioner to go into business and to be a founder, and I've worked for so many founders, right? I worked for Steve Jobs, and I worked for the Uber team, and I've worked for some really, really difficult founders, and so I've seen how some startups, and I think many startups founders get, I think, out of their depth in terms of their people management, that I think through the pressures of the business and maybe and in some senses their own immaturities and their own, what's happening in their own lives, become quite tough and to a certain extent quite cruel as managers in their businesses. And I've had to step in as the HR partner and try to bring some founders down to earth in terms of you can't treat people in certain ways, and you shouldn't be treating your staff in certain ways, and take some time for yourself so that you don't behave like this. And in becoming a founder myself, I was determined to that wouldn't be me. I might not be the most successful startup founder in the world. Panalyt, I think, is a great business, but we may not be the next Apple or the next Uber. But along the way, we're going to treat our team with respect. We're going to treat our colleagues with kindness, and that's been a core tenet for me as a founder, and just to learn from my own experiences and think, okay, we're going to be different. We are going to run a startup in a collegiate and supportive and caring way. So yeah, that's kind of was one of the main things that guides all of my decisions as founder and CEO is treating people with respect and kindness.
Any stories from Yusuf? I mean, it's been an interesting journey from what we heard, your journey thus far, and on your experience for the past 4 years in this project. I mean, in this, with Panalyt. And I mean, it's all about people here. We're talking about HR. It's all about, humanize while it's, advancing it with analytics, and, ultimately it's about humanizing the whole experience. So is there any kindness stories that you could share with us, and your views on kindness in this whole journey?
I'm not sure it's so much about kindness as much as about what I've realized is, I mean, everyone just likes to be respected, and in most cases, if you treat someone with respect, and by this I mean like something that's more like, let's say, for example, if I reach out to you for a call, let's say, if you just take the sales aspect, right? If I've done the research to actually understand what you do and then kind of be like, okay, this is why I want to speak with you, that's what I'm saying as respect right now. Just sending a very polite email to you that I might have sent out to 10,000 other people, that's not really the thing. But what I found is a lot of people, when you do reach out to them, they are usually very kind in responding back, and that's been really helpful for us, especially when we build a new thing. For example, if we take something around all the work we're doing around organizational network analysis, or maybe something along recruitment effectiveness, quality of hire, or attrition risk modeling, we've reached out to people to get their feedback, and they've been very kind in giving that
Amazingly generous.
those insights to us. But I mean, what I've noticed is you have to kind of like do that fundamental step of researching the person you're reaching out to. But it's worked out. I mean, we've been lucky to speak with some companies and some people, which for a startup at our size, it would have been quite tough to reach them. But yeah, it's just that thing I've noticed. And of course, with employees, it's always like, in a startup, you can really see how the culture changes. And usually see when everyone's kind to each other, that's when everyone's also feeling more motivated to work, enjoying the work, performing better. So it's like
Yeah, I
win-win,
think
I
the two
guess.
things go hand in hand. I totally agree.
Yeah. I guess your story, both of you, Yusuf reaching out to Daniel, right? I think that in itself represents the kindness of the heart and to want to make things work together, right, collaboratively. And I guess the advent of technology, I think the word humanizing, people tend to think, robots will take over the world, the RPAs and all that, right? So how could you convince the people out there, right? Even with technology, you're still humanizing the
Oh,
experience. You're not really,
absolutely. I remember a very senior exec talking to me about at a very large e-commerce company, was pushing back very, very hard on sort of my approach to HR in terms of making HR scalable and effective and oriented and
yeah,
data oriented, and was saying, oh, you can't take the heart out of HR. You can't take the heart. That HR should be about the heart and about
yeah,
caring about people. And I'm like, of course it is. I've dedicated my whole life to doing this. Of course I care about people, and I can tell you, if
Mm,
we've got 10,000 employees and we've got like 50 HR managers, we can't do personal one-to-one care with everyone. We have to take the data for everyone and identify who's in trouble, who's having a hard time, and spend the time with them. And we need to put processes in place to make sure that we catch the people that are having a hard time or in trouble. The only way you can show heart and kindness to a very large number of people at scale, if you can't afford a big HR department, the only way you can be kind at scale is through effective use of data to identify where you should be helping people. And that's what I absolutely firmly believe. It's that data and heart are not opposed. One supports the other. Yeah. So that's it's a
yeah,
very fundamental part to how I think about analytics and how I think about scalability through technology. It's about helping us to be better people and be better managers.
right. Yes, thank you. I love that. And I guess we're almost almost time, but I would love to hear your, again, we have audience here, from various backgrounds, and again, HR touches, I guess, not all, if not all, right? About 90% of all of us. So, and I think you're making this progress or change towards HR, because there's some quarters saying very fearful of HR. It also changes a lot of perspectives of I can see you're changing the culture of democratizing data, going with openness, because a lot of HR, a lot of data sometimes is very confidential. That seems to be right. That seems to be the culture. But you're changing this behavior. So how can you convince, I guess, everyone here in terms of this is the way forward? Like I said, going back to, more and more people are saying, oh, the future is so scary with, like I said, with technology. How do you still convince that this is what we need without losing that essence of people management? I think you did mention that how analytics and heart goes hand in hand. So
Yeah,
a few
Yusuf, do
more
you want
words.
to go?
Yeah. Anything.
Sorry, Daniel, you can go first. I think my
Okay, sorry.
network's really
I think your
hanging
network's
up.
hanging. In terms of sort of an overall thought, I think I think HR does have a role, and I think this whole experience with COVID and the complete change to people's work environments, and now the idea about how people come back and what we see in the US and elsewhere with the Great Resignation that's going on, I think it fundamentally shows that we can work differently. COVID and working from home has proved that work can change, and that people that never thought they could work remotely can work remotely. And the Great Resignation has shown that people want to work differently, and they want something fundamental has to change in work as we define it. And I've had a lot of I've had a lot of my senior HR network reach out to me to sort of bounce ideas and talk through about how to structure returning from COVID, returning to work. And there's an overwhelming understanding that we can't return to the normal. There is no normal to return to, and that's not what people want anyway. And so I think. What I hope is that over the long term, I hope Panalyt's a tool that's there to help people to make smart people-centered decisions around what I think is going to be an ever-changing face of modern work. And I would be extremely happy, to be in my next life, whatever post Panalyt is for me, to see Panalyt as a tool that's used across the HR community to just help people make better decisions that are making better work environments for people. And I really believe we're going to continue to see a lot of changes to what we conceive of as work, and a lot more experimentation in different styles of work and different styles of employment and et cetera into the future. And anything that we can do to make that transition, to make that evolution easier and better and more supportive for people, it would make me very, very happy to see.
Inspiring. I mean, I can see how much can scale up and the potential of the solutions. And yeah, I mean, seamlessly, I mean, like I said, technology and people working hand in hand. I mean, you're negating the fact, I mean, that fear of people saying, okay, like I said, robots will take over the world or technology will take over the world. No way. I mean, you're convinced, you're telling us no.
It will support us. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Maybe
thanks very much for this opportunity. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Maybe from Yusuf, any thoughts on your last few words before we leave?
No, it's been quite interesting. I mean, yeah.
So we have comments like awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's been, I mean, like usually with me and Daniel, we're just on sales calls, and we're on so many sales calls together that we don't really speak.
It's nice to talk about, the bigger concepts, isn't it?
Yeah.
We wish all the best. I think there's all these comments or stories, Daniel and Yusuf. I think you're like an epitome of what LinkedIn can do and the potentials of just reaching out and working collaboratively. And wow, looking at your achievements, I think only the best for both of you. And I'm sure I will see you in a Panalyt all over. And is it true you'll be moving to Japan? I mean, your headquarters will be in Japan.
We're moving the headquarters to Japan because a lot of our investors and our biggest clients are in Japan, and it's a fantastic investment market for longer term investment technologies like ours. I mean, big data requires a lot of long term investment, and Japanese investors tend to lean towards more long term investments. But also as a mixed foreign Japanese management team, we get a lot of traction with big Japanese investors. So yeah, it's made sense for us to have our headquarters there. It doesn't change where any of our people are, but as an investment location, it's been great. So yeah.
Looking forward. I hope some of the Malaysian companies will be having Panalyt solutions in their HR.
I hope so. Anyone's welcome to call us. Thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks for all the really interesting questions.
Thank you to Daniel and so for being. We only wish the best for you. All right, thank you everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All the best, Daniel. And so I will connect on LinkedIn.